Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Sunday Design Rant. This is episode 6 of this series where I use my game development experience to rant about design aspects in games. My name is slicedlime and today we're looking at Sid Meier's Civilization series. In specific, the two latest installments of the series, Civilization 5 and Beyond Earth. I haven't played the earlier Civilization games all that much, but I have played Civilization 5 many hundreds of hours. Civilization is a turn-based strategy game famous for trapping players in only one more turn thinking, until suddenly somehow it's 4 AM. Civilization 5 in particular is also a masterpiece in terms of getting players quickly into the game and teaching them to understand the game. What is commonly called onboarding in game development. Why is Civilization 5 so easy to get into? Well, first of all, there's a set of advisors telling you what's good and what's bad about each option. Secondly, there's not all that many options to begin with. First, there's only two: where to move your warriors and where to settle a city. Where to settle is actually a fairly involved decision, but looking at it as a new player, in general, starting square seems like a good enough space, so city it is. Then we get into two new options: what to build and what to research. Generally, what you research is the bigger choice that you will consider first. Here we have a few options and a huge tree of stuff being unlocked up ahead. We might look at the immediate choices, or we may look a few steps ahead, but one thing that's clear at a glance is that the choices are intertwined. We're not going to get past a certain point without researching some stuff on each track. The building screen is also simple at this point: a new unit or monument. Each of these choices are tied to resources and such, and what each resource does is fairly intuitive. We pick something and go on, and as we unlock things we get a deeper understanding of what's going on. We need food, which we get from farms and similar. We need production, which we get from mines and other things. Even the coloring scheme of the game tells us some bit of information about what's going on. Anything that you can find on the map at this early stage, wheat, sheep, deer, stone, all the luxury resources and so on, are all clearly labeled as to what you need to research in order to be able to get them and use them. And those unlocks can always be found in the first few tiers of the unlock tree. All the other resources that are beyond the comprehension of my fledgling civilization, horses, iron, coal, and so on, don't even appear on the map until I've researched the skill to understand them. In actuality, there's a huge amount of depth hidden behind these seemingly simple screens. The order of research is hugely important, and you can queue up several choices at once. The city screen can also contain a build queue, but more importantly you can control in detail what parts of your city are being worked, which in turn decides what kind of output it has. It's not that these things aren't there from the start. They are, and you can expand all the options if you like. On a high level of difficulty, these things are hugely important, but a new player doesn't have to care about them, and that's the genius part about it. They aren't force-fed tutorial things that are unlocked one by one as the player plays the game. All the functions of the game are there from the start for experienced users to use, but they aren't hugely important the first time you play, and they can easily wait until later. It then doesn't take long for the first barbarians to show up, units that are roughly on your level, and will teach you about how combat works. Simple choices, an easy start, the constant allure of one more turn and lots of depth. It makes me periodically come back to Civilization 5, get sucked right back in and play just one more turn, until suddenly I should have gone to bed 2 hours ago, but the next turn my new units will finish building, so I'll just play that one more turn. Why is there light on my screen? Is that sunrise? So I love Civilization 5, and I'm also a sucker for science fiction. When I heard about Beyond Earth, I was thrilled. The trailer shows the game as a continuation of a Civilization 5 science victory, and is enough to give you the chills. So as this eagerly awaited game finally released, I started it to find a game that is in many ways similar to Civilization 5, but in some very crucial ways also very different. Where Civilization 5 featured a fairly easily navigated menu system and interface, Beyond Earth sports a world-end interface that is almost entirely void of contrast. Everything in the user interface, and most of the game world to start off with as well, is in some shade of either greenish blue or bluish green. Just this fact alone means that the game is much harder to interpret. And then when you dive into it, it's like they consciously decided to change every single thing that made Civilization 5 an easy game to pick up and understand. There are tons of new resources, which by the nature of it being an alien world lack the natural understanding you'd get from resources in Civilization 5 being of this world. You'd think then that they'd unlock progressively just like in Civilization 5, but that isn't the case. They're all on the map from the start. That means that the very first thing that happens to a new player, even a player with prior experience playing Civilization, is information overload. What are all these strange and wondrous things, and how can I use them? I better check the research tree, and that's when the next shock happens. The problem here is that the tree has become a massive web of technology, reaching out in all directions. Each spot has a bunch of options that unlock new things, and also a number of further connections outwards. There's so many more options available at the start, and worse, they all lead in different directions. What this means is that contrary to Civilization 5, where the first choice didn't really matter all that much in the long run, since branches merged back together later in the tech tree, here my very first choices are incredibly important for which resources I'll be able to unlock far down the line. What makes it even worse is that many of the resources you can see on the map from the very start are unlocked by research items quite far into the tree. What happens is one of two things. Either the player gets to give up and make something of an uninformed choice, or she gets to spend hours reading up on every single upgrade in the tree in order to be able to make an informed decision. And it doesn't end there. That was apparently not enough complexity. On top of this, there's a layer of affinity. A three-way choice between harmony, supremacy, and purity. This choice is not made separately, but by the research path you take. Which means pursuing a certain affinity requires going down a certain path of technological advancement, which makes your choice in the new research web even more important, and even more overwhelming. And since affinity affects many things in the game, including how you win the game, it is not a choice you can easily ignore or leave for later. Like Civilization 5, it doesn't take long for you to encounter your first AI-controlled enemy in Beyond Earth. This time it's alien lifeforms, and there's again some very crucial differences between the games. Where Civilization 5's barbarians are weak to medium difficulty, aliens in Beyond Earth can be incredibly hard, requiring units unlocked a fair bit into the game to defeat. Since these aliens and barbarians are essentially random elements, this means it's easy to get randomly screwed over by their movement. In Civilization 5, this becomes part of the process for managing the start of your civilization, and a part of how new players learn how combat works without having to encounter an enemy civilization. Since you start out with nothing that can possibly defeat an alien in Beyond Earth, both of these effects are lost. Instead, you'll just have to back away when you randomly encounter a nasty alien bug, or if you're unlucky, you'll just randomly lose some early game units to an alien that you couldn't see on the map before making your move. In the end, I'm sure there are many things to be said about the depth of the gameplay systems in Beyond Earth, but I find myself with the problem that I never even get there. The information overload and hostility of the game towards new players puts me off even continuing, and I still find myself more enticed to go back and play another round of Civilization 5 than to go try Beyond Earth again, to the point where I've still spent 50 times more time playing Civilization 5 than I have Beyond Earth. And one thing I should note here is that this isn't because Beyond Earth was made for experienced players and I don't fit in. I came to Beyond Earth with more than 400 hours of Civilization 5 under my belt, and it didn't help. The problem is in the design decisions doubtlessly aimed to provide richness and depth to the choices you make in the game, but have failed to take into consideration how to lead players into an understanding of that richness and of that depth. Looking back, I feel like my first 5 hours of playing Beyond Earth were spent reading text, and I still came out with a lack of understanding of where to go, what to build, and what to research. In the end, the simplicity of each individual decision in Civilization 5 that leads to the allure of just doing one more turn is completely absent in Beyond Earth. Because just one more turn of reading lots of text trying to figure out what's a good option doesn't sound like a good time to me. And that's a pity because I always need more science fiction in my life. My name is slicedlime. As always, thank you for listening. Let me know what your thoughts are about Civilization and about this rant. Leave a comment on the video, and I'll see you next Sunday in another rant, or in another video. Take care. Bye bye.